fire seasons in the state of California, that it is a year-round challenge for all of us. But I want folks to know we are mindful of the threats. We are mindful of the understandable anxiety that this time of year presents to people, in addition to what's going on with COVID-19. And I want folks to know that we have been preparing for this upcoming wildfire season, and we're not stepping back our efforts. We're in fact stepping them up. The budget I will announce tomorrow will include enhancements for wildfire preparation and preparedness across the board, as well as suppression strategies and opportunities to be more resilient in our recovery strategies. In a moment, I'll lay out some very specific examples of budgetary enhancements, but let me just lay down a predicate. Just this last week, 246 wildfires have occurred here in the state of California. We just ran some numbers from January to May 10th last year. We had 675 wildfires. From January to May 10th this year, we've had 1,135 wildfires. Represents roughly a 60% increase this year compared to last year in the total number of wildfires. Doesn't surprise our team here, doesn't surprise many of the experts. We have had a below average year of precipitation, the snowpack substantially below where it's been, or at least was last year. And so as a consequence, this has only reinforced our desire to do more and to be better in terms of our preparation. We had announced last year that we were focusing on 200 vulnerable communities in the state of California, and really focused our efforts on 35 high-profile vegetation and fuel management projects. 34 of those 35 have been complete. The one that's been delayed a little bit will be done in just 8 days, and that's around Highway 17 in the sort of south of Santa Clara County, more towards Santa Cruz. That project has been a stubborn project, but finally will be complete, as I said, just in a matter of days. We continue to do more than we've done in the past on defensible spaces, and Chief Porter will come up. He'll talk perhaps a little bit more about some of those efforts. Our fuels management and vegetation management are not just focused on those 35 high-profile projects. They exist and persist all throughout the state of California. They're complemented by private sector work in that space, by local work in that space, and by the state's efforts themselves. Some 450,000 acres in 2020 will be advanced in terms of the fuels management, in terms of the vegetation management, in some cases some prescribed burns, and others some reforestation. In that portfolio, we're getting more work done than we have in the past. It's still not where we need to go as a state. The size and scope of the state, we still have a lot more work to do in the future on vegetation and forest management, and there is no substitute for the work the federal government can be providing and advancing in this space as well. And we encourage, as always, our federal partners to help us with these efforts, because the overwhelming majority of land that exists in this state, wildland, is federal land. A very small percentage is state land, and again, private and local land. And so we continue to advance and look forward to securing even more support in that space. In an effort as well to secure support, we recognize that this season, fire season, always is anxiety-inducing for an additional reason, and that's the issues of PSPS. Those are 4 letters that most Californians, at least in Northern California in particular, are familiar with, but those in Southern California as well. These are the power shutoff that we experienced in record numbers last year. In an effort to do more and do better, as you may recall, a few months ago, the top story that focused our attention and focused our efforts in the legislature and in my office was working to help get PG&E back on its feet and out of bankruptcy, and to help the 3 other investor-owned utilities, or 2 others, 3 total in the state investor-owned utilities, to be more secure, and not only financially, but more secure in their capacity to invest in your future, in our collective future. And what I mean by that is to make the investments themselves, independent of the state, federal, local, and private sector, to invest in their own efforts to secure their wires, their poles, to advance their undergrounding, to focus on secularizers and making sure that they have greater capacity in real time to have information with infrared cameras and weather stations, their efforts to do more on their own vegetation management, to secure their own aerial fleet, to provide more air support for recovery efforts, to do more on your behalf to secure wildfire safety and public safety. I want to update you just in those efforts. You may recall there was an effort that the legislature and our team advanced that required certain things from our investor-owned utilities. I want to update you on what those are and remind you of how important they are to our larger wildfire efforts. $5 billion is required of our investor-owned utilities in safety measures. That's a requirement pursuant to the agreement we advanced that must come from the IOUs directly, independent, again, of all of these state efforts. We created a wildfire advisory committee to focus on public safety. That is also a requirement under that bill and these efforts. We are announcing tomorrow in our budget, the Public Utilities Commission is building a team of 106 individuals that will create a wildfire safety division within the Public Utilities Commission. That division will become an independent entity, but right now it will start within the Public Utilities Commission. That division will 24/7 oversee the efforts of all 3 of our largest investor-owned utilities. We have a monitor now that we have put in place, for example, at PG&E, to independently monitor their safety efforts. We have safety mitigation plans, what we call wildfire mitigation plans, that are a requirement to be certified by the boards of these utilities and then ultimately by the Public Utility Commission with an advisory committee that will advise the commission. It's a way of saying we are in a place we've never been in the past in terms of oversight and accountability and transparency with our investor-owned utilities to help support these wildfire mitigation efforts. I am not naive that these utilities are where they need to be. Quite the contrary. In fact, PG&E is still in bankruptcy. They have the opportunity to come out of bankruptcy by June 30th, but a predicate of all of that are fulfilling the requirements of these plans. But we will do our part, and that is to make sure that there's real transparency and accountability to these utilities, and to make sure that they do justice to what they're promising and what has been promoted in terms of these requirements. So that's just a quick update on where the IOUs are. And by the way, I just do want to recognize that PG&E has significantly increased their number of weather stations, significantly increased their high-definition cameras, and has committed to new protocols on the PSPS, where they have committed to us a duration reduction of roughly 50% in terms of their time to provide what we refer to as an all clear and then turning on your lights. We'll hold them to account in that respect. I don't hold my breath in any of these categories. We've been sobered by the reality of PG&E in particular over the last number of years. But we are emerging in a different frame, in a different space, and a different framework of engagement now and oversight that I hope can allow people to rest, well, maybe not with both eyes closed, but one eye open, but rest assured that we are taking these efforts very, very seriously and holding this company to account in ways they haven't been in the past. So from the IOUs to the work that the Public Utilities Commission will be doing, to a budget that will increase at the Office of Emergency Services over the existing baseline budget approved last year by $127 million. We will be improving the budget at the Office of Emergency Service to provide for ongoing monitoring, not just of oversight related to wildfires, but also all other hazards. We talk in terms of all hazards. That includes earthquakes. And I'm, again, maybe just being born and bred, 5-generation Bay Area resident, San Francisco resident. Earthquakes continue to be top of my mind. There's $17.3 million in this budget for our early warning system, for our earthquake system. We're going to transfer our Seismic Safety Committee into the Office of Emergency Services for stronger integration, $2.2 million of budget enhancement that I'm recommending for the legislature's consideration. We'll announce tomorrow. In addition to that, we are looking to do more in terms of our disaster assistance, some $38.2 million of enhancements in that effort. I referenced PSPS. We're going to put $50 million in the budget to help support grants for local counties to help in their efforts around PSPS. And by the way, that matters this year in particular because there's some concern around PSPS turning off the lights during the election. And so we want to secure the election as well. And so those dollars are for that consideration, in addition to other considerations as it relates to backup generators and more broad planning. Speaking of planning and preparedness, there's an additional $9.2 million for baseline support for a number of individuals that we believe are important to enhance the Office of Emergency Service in this category as well. Speaking of categories, I have neglected one, and it's important as I segue and introduce Chief Porter, and that's CAL FIRE in particular. Separate from the $127 million enhancement, the Office of Emergency Service above the current baseline that we're proposing to the legislature, we are also proposing $85.7 million enhancement to CAL FIRE, specifically to improve surge capacity and to hire critical personnel before the peak of this year's fire season. Roughly 600 additional personnel, we believe, are needed to protect people from wildfires to the extent we can protect you and help mitigate the ferocity of these wildfires. So this is a significant enhancement in terms of the overall ranks at CAL FIRE, and we're just going to hold the line on that. We're going to work with the legislature, and I hope together we can together hold the line in terms of the importance of these personnel. So that's an enhancement in that space. I could mention a number of others from work we're doing with Technosilva in terms of predictive modeling, which is important, new tools, new technology that we'll bring to bear, which will also help with our wildfire efforts. But foundationally, people, there's no substitute for people. And those people, by the way, will also be supported by these engines. We're able to get, by July of this year, we will have an additional 26 new engines all throughout the state of California, including 4 incident command units that will also be deployed by July 1st. We're going to have other equipment, even outside of just these engines, and they include new Black Hawk helicopters. You may recall we promoted the procurement of 12 Black Hawk helicopters. We're not going to walk that back. It's just too important in terms of our mutual aid and public safety in the state of California. I want folks to know those helicopters are now arriving. First one came in October of last year. In fact, it was just used in that red fire up in Tehama County. These Black Hawks are extraordinary. They provide faster suppression capacity, a more robust ability in terms of number of gallons of water that they're able to disperse. They're safer for our personnel in terms of redundancy, double twin turbine engine. I can go on with the specs of these. I think they're S701 Blackhawks, but 12 of them are coming in. The first one came in October. Another one's coming in this month. Another one after that next month. We'll start to see these Blackhawks in our fleet, and I just think that's fundamental and foundational to our suppression efforts and our ability, again, to meet the public safety needs in this state. We can talk another time about the C-130s. All those things are baseline. We're continuing to bring into this new year. So look, let me now bring in, I think I've said enough on this topic, at least for the moment. Let me bring in the chief of CAL FIRE. He could talk more specifically about this budget. I think a little bit of relief as well with some of these recommendations. But you'll be seeing plenty, I think, sadly, of Thom Porter over the coming weeks and months, as is the case every fire season in this state. The hots are getting hotter, the dries are getting drier, the wets are getting wetter. There's a new reality. For those that don't believe in climate change or science, I remind them when appropriate, after our stay-at-home orders are lifted, when you can come in without fear of transmission of this deadly virus, come to California, visit us, learn about climate change firsthand, because even if you deny it, your own eyes may tell you something very, very differently. Observed evidence, not just intellectual curiosity, should secure a new reality that climate change is real and it's here and the effects are profound. And that's why we want to acknowledge that as well up front. And that's a good part of the work that our chief has to deal with as it relates to the acuity of the fight he has in front of us each and every fire season. Chief Porter.
Thank you, Governor. I'm going to cover three things: response, prevention, and preparedness. Very simply, those three things, every one of them is being invested in by this state government. Thank you, Governor, for recognizing that these are things that are not going away. They are very important to protecting lives, property, and the environment of California for future generations, and they have to be invested in now, and continuing that investment is key to our success. So, response. Response is to wildland fire in particular, but all large emergencies, is a team sport. No one agency in California can do that mission alone. CAL FIRE is responsible for wildland fires off of federal lands, sometimes on federal lands as well, throughout the state. And so we lead that charge. We have a very strong wildland fire ethic, wildland fire training, wildland fire response. We also have, as in the case of where we stand today, a mutual aid response, that is CAL FIRE employees. But we also need our local government partners. We need our cities, we need our counties, we need our districts, we need our volunteers. We need them all healthy and ready to go to these wildfires as well. As I said, team sport, we need everybody. That includes our federal partners. Wildland fire fighters from the U.S. Forest Service, BLM, BIA, and other agencies, Fish and Wildlife Service. We need everybody ready to go. What I'm happy to say is that we've been working since January very closely with all of these groups to ensure that we're looking out for the safety and health of the firefighters, but also for the health and safety of the community that we will be coming to protect, not knowing where that's going to be across the state of California. So very coordinated, more than any other time in the level of coordination that's happening. And that is because of the pandemic that we're working through. So prevention. Prevention is a key component to keeping fires small, to keeping fires out of the areas that are most populated, where we're going to have the most concern about lives and property loss, but it's also important for our backcountry fires as well. The reason I bring up prevention is I had a conversation with the chief of the Forest Service, Vicki Christensen, just yesterday. I asked her the question about what do you see as the need for being proactive this year and putting all of the fires out as quickly as we possibly can. She was very complimentary to my question and expressed and pointed back to her chief's letter to the nation of firefighters under her that says just that. Initial attack is the key component to keeping fires small and keeping firefighters healthy. I am going to continue to push that with my federal partners. Everybody's on board. As I said, we've been talking about this. This is a very key component. But if we keep fires small at the beginning with these extra resources that we're going to have, then we will protect the public and our firefighters from unnecessary exposure to smoke and the need to bring them together in congregational settings. All key components. Prevention has a piece that is all-inclusive, those agencies that I talked about, but it also includes you, the public. And that brings me from the bridge from prevention to preparedness. You, every single one of you in California, have a part in this. You can protect lives and property. You can reach out to your neighbors, reach out to the elderly, reach out to family members. You can help them do the defensible space around their homes that needs to be done and should be done at this time of year. We are doing our defensible space inspections, and so you'll see our people around. Local government is doing that as well, and some of the counties. We need to make sure that you have defensible space, and you can help your neighbors, neighbors helping neighbors, to be prepared for this fire season. There's so many other things you can do as well, including the hardening of your structure. Hardening of your structure is something that you can do. Again, you can help your neighbor do, and that will make it more resistant to burning down in the event of a fire coming into your neighborhood. There are some very simple things that you can do. It's easy. Just go to readyforwildfire.org, check out the website. It has checklists. You can see how you're doing. Very important information there. There's also an app that you can get on any mobile device that will take you through the exact same thing. It'll give you a shopping list that you can take down to Home Depot or Lowe's or your favorite store and get the supplies that you'll need to do that. So if you will continue to work on that piece, you will be a hero in the wildland fire setting in California. And every single Californian can be that hero. We will work on the wildland fire problems in the backcountry and in the canyons and wildland spaces, continue to do the fuel work that the governor mentioned, and that is what we will do and commit to, and we will respond to every single wildland fire that occurs in the state this year, and there will be tens of thousands.